Selfishness, the lack of consideration for the feelings of others, a term well known by most, if not all, adults. In primary school, we are taught to be kind, think of others, and to strive for selflessness whenever possible. Yet, some are more gifted than others in this regard. It seems that human nature is constantly at odds with itself over this concept, because while your conscience and logical mind implore you to be better, selfish internal desires never truly evaporate. This is to say that in most cases, no matter how diligent, how holy the person, no human can be without selfishness. Therefore, it is reasonable to accept a certain degree of selfishness from not only those around you, but from yourself as well. One series that seems to be obsessed with this concept of selfish desire is Tappei Nagatsuki's Re:Zero. This obsession is made clear in the first season by the main character. In the first season, Natsuki Subaru is selfishness personified. He acts on impulse, considers only himself, and inserts himself into any situation he deems interesting. As I'm sure you can imagine, this makes Subaru pretty unlikable for most of Season 1. It takes nothing short of literal death to motivate change in this foolish child. However, death proves to be a pretty good motivator. Season 1 of Re:Zero is excellent for a lot of reasons, but I think its most entertaining subplot for me is watching Subaru's growth. Subaru grows from an incredibly selfish and self-serving person into someone who is at least self-aware. At the beginning of the show, as previously mentioned, Subaru is a horribly selfish guy. He does pretty much anything he can do to get himself closer to Amelia, even though she makes it more than clear many times over the course of the show that he is crossing the line. This line isn't crossed just once though. In fact, it's crossed many times over the course of Season 1. It is genuinely difficult to watch some of the scenes where Subaru is doing as he pleases in direct opposition to Amelia's wishes. But what makes it worse is that he continues to pine after her as if he hadn't trampled on her desires moments before. This selfish behavior isn't just relegated to Amelia, by the way. He treats everyone else around him as trivial or inconsequential because they aren't Amelia. This here is in and of itself deplorable, but combined with his attitude and the way he treats Amelia, it makes for a main character that's difficult to like. However, a main character that is difficult to like does not necessarily mean a main character that is not fun to watch. Subaru makes for an incredibly interesting protagonist because he is deeply flawed. However, while he's genuinely insufferable at first, he does start to progress with each death. Each and every time he comes back, slightly better than the last time. And that can mean different things depending on different parts of the show. Sometimes he comes back with knowledge that'll carry him to the next checkpoint, or sometimes he comes back emotionally different than he was before. This cycle of change by death makes for tangible checkpoints by which to measure development. By the end of Season 1, it seems that Subaru has made a lot of progress. The show certainly wants you to see him differently than you did at the beginning, and that is apparent by how much more useful he becomes to the plot. In the beginning, Subaru can't do shit on his own. And I mean, that makes sense for someone just dropped into the middle of a new world, but what doesn't make sense is how he continues to put burden on those around him because of that uselessness. Now, contrast that to the end of the show, where he's making alliances with other leaders, he's leading strikes on one of the witch cultist groups. It's a completely different character, and because of that, he has completely different dynamics with the cast. So, from that, we can absolutely see that he has become a different person by the end of Season 1. And this type of growth, structured in this manner, usually symbolizes the end of an arc for a character. However, Re:Zero has a way of writing that's a bit more complex than you might expect. Contrary to expectations, Subaru's battle with selfishness is not over by the end of Season 1. Now, before we get into how his arc continues in Season 2, I think it's important to mention how the subtlety and restraint in Season 2 are incredible. While catching up on all the episodes of Season 2 that are out so far, I started to feel like, yeah, this arc is definitely over. We'll probably see the spotlight shift to another character now. But what perplexed me was that there was no real shift. The show seemed even more concerned with Subaru than it did before, and I found this to be quite odd. Usually when the main character completes an arc, the show will find a way to examine side characters and flesh out the supporting cast, but Re:Zero Season 2 doesn't really do this. Now, that's not to say that the side characters are given no development or growth, but the focus is still definitely on Subaru. So that left me pretty confused about what Re:Zero was trying to do with Subaru. That is, until episode 37, or episode 12 of Season 2. In episode 37, Subaru is confronted with all the possible worlds that he left behind in order to make use of his return by death power. These scenes put heavy emphasis on the burden left behind to his friends and colleagues. After just one of these short visions, everything about Season 2 suddenly clicked for me. Subaru's arc didn't end in Season 1. He clearly changed and grew, but his selfishness has shifted from being blatant and open to subdued and internal. All throughout the latter half of Season 1 and all of Season 2, Subaru has been making it his mission to take care of everything that happens all by himself, with little concern for what those around him are capable of. He has been disregarding the skill and knowledge of his friends to keep them safe, which may seem noble on the surface, but in reality, that's really quite patronizing. The people Subaru is close to are known to be very powerful figures in the world of ReZero, so casting them aside to take every challenge on himself is nothing but pure selfishness. I think the reason that Season 2 confused me was that for most of the season, I felt he was being genuinely selfless, but looking back on the characters affected by his actions, that's simply not the case. They certainly did not receive it that way, and the most affected of all of these characters is none other than Emilia. Emilia is all Subaru cares about. He desires to protect her and keep her safe no matter what. In this pursuit, however, little consideration is given to her feelings. This becomes most apparent when in one of his loops he suggests that she withdraws from the trials as he wants to do them for her. This is the first major sign that Subaru hasn't actually finished growing, and it somehow flew right over my head. In this scene, however, it is clear that Subaru wounds Emilia's pride and feelings by postulating that the task at hand is simply too much for her. In this same loop, we see Emilia treat him more coldly than usual, and it's here that we can see how Subaru has yet to grasp the concepts of what it means to respect other people and hold them in high regard. Now let's throw it back a little bit to back at the beginning of the script when I said the focus didn't really change. Well, that focus does shift just a little tiny bit to include a new character, Echidna, the Witch of Greed. This is where things get a little bit spoilery, so if that's going to bother you, I suggest skipping to the time on screen. Now, Echidna is important because she holds basically all of the knowledge that Subaru, and by extension the viewer, could ever want to know about the world. She offers him knowledge in return for his own experience with the return by death power. In fact, she's so enamored by this concept that in the most recent episode, she offers him a contract, which basically means that they would be bound to one another according to specific terms. Just like a real-life contract, ain't that crazy? Also in the most recent episode is the ultimate confrontation of Subaru's selfishness. He's contacted by Echidna and all of the other witches, where he is forced to view his selfish actions firsthand and hear how it has affected those around him. This scene almost feels like some sort of intervention, but I think it serves as a bit more than that. This scene, in my opinion, is designed to be a moment for the viewer to see Subaru's main issue if they haven't already caught on. It's like a wake-up call to the audience, saying that Subaru is still not perfect and he hasn't been perfect this whole time. I think this is genius as a storytelling device, because I'm sure a lot of people like me didn't recognize that Subaru is still extremely selfish in Season 2, so having a full-on confrontation here makes for an interesting collapse of the character for those who hadn't seen through this noble persona. While Subaru's efforts in Season 2 were clearly noble and in good faith, the effect is all the same. It is important to consider how others will feel even if it seems like the action is selfless, because sometimes the lines between selflessness and self-serving are blurry. Subaru's extended arc in Season 2 so far is meant to put that blurred line on display and show off someone who has yet to comprehend that the line is even there. I think this arc, along with the extended world building and lore given by Echidna, make ReZero Season 2 just as, if not more interesting than Season 1. I am extremely interested to where Season 2 is gonna go and where Subaru will end up by the end of it. Hey there, thanks for watching my video all the way through. If you made it this far, then you probably liked what you heard, so consider leaving a like. Or, if you really liked it, you could subscribe to make sure you never miss an upload. I never stop thinking about things, and I can't stop making these videos, so there's plenty more content to come. In the meantime, be sure to check out some of my other videos, like the ones that are gonna appear on screen in a couple seconds. Or you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. But with all that YouTube stuff out of the way, I just wanna say, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.